I have a suspicion that it's only the British who would stand out in the pouring rain for a service of this kind.
With all the goodwill in the world, the citizens of Gosport turned out in their hundreds to honor Canadians who helped to win World War II. 50 years ago, Gosport was at the center of preparations for the invasion of Normandy. Thousands of Canadian soldiers trained on the beach here, practicing for the all-important assault on the coast of France. Today, a landing craft was once again on the beach.
You don't want to go across one of those landing crafts?
No. I'm quite terra firma. More firma, less terror, you know.
The plaque unveiled by Prime Minister Chrétien paid tribute to the 15,000 Canadians who left here on June 4th and 5th, 1944. They boarded the many ships that filled Gosport Harbor and headed off to danger and often death in Normandy. Many Canadians attended today's service. For some, it brought back painful memories. Boyd Anderson was with the 1st Canadian Paratroop Regiment. He landed behind enemy lines on D-Day.
It's never very nice to see human beings being killed, especially under those circumstances. And those are sad, yes.
George Lynch Staunton was a gunner with the 14th Canadian Artillery Regiment. He was hit by a German shell on the D-Day beaches.
Well, I was knocked out, almost first crack out of the bag. I could hardly see, and I certainly couldn't move. And that night was the most scariest, I think, of my life.
For Gosport resident Winnie Coombs, today's ceremony reawakened lots of memories. She worked in a pub, and her favorite customers were men from the North Nova Scotia Highlanders. She remembers seeing her boys leave for D-Day.
And as they went out of the door, I used to think to myself, well, God bless you, I hope you come back.
Many did not come back, and it's their sacrifice, above all, that Gosport remembered today. Anne McMillan, CBC News, Gosport. Boyd Anderson is 74, a rancher in Glentworth near the Montana border in Saskatchewan. 50 years ago, he was a long way from home, behind enemy lines in France. Anderson was a member of the 1st and only Canadian Paratroop Battalion in the 6th British Airborne Division. He knew he was heading into action when he boarded a plane on an English airfield just after midnight on June the 6th.
We got into this airplane and we took off, and you know, I didn't hear any cheering. It was pretty quiet in there. At least I was quiet. I was doing some thinking and figuring out what we had to do that night. We'd been briefed, and we knew what our job would be when we got in there. Well, what was going through my mind was that it's here. You know, this is what I've been training for. This is what the country has been spending money on me for. And one could say, well, it's whether you were jumping with joy or however, it was job. You knew you had to do it. It's like a bad bronc out here at home. You know that he's throwing everybody else off, but gee whiz, somebody's got to ride him. So you go, and that's the way it was going in there. You had mixed thoughts about it.
As the plane approached the French coast, it came under enemy fire.
All hell broke loose, and there was lights all over the place, and our pilot was taking evasive action, and our plane was going down and up and sideways and all over the place. And I thought, well, to me it looked like that was the end, but I didn't know. And we got out of it somehow. The flak was coming down. To me it sounded like hailstorms on a tin roof or a granary or something, which we have here in southern Saskatchewan. And we got out of there, but just not even a minute after that, the red light came on an airplane alerting us to get ready to jump, and it was followed immediately by the green. I always remember that jump master. I can see him, and his face was white. He said, "Goodbye, boys, and God bless you." It was a, well, and I could say the same for him, because I thought my chances were about as good as his were. I can tell you that I was happy to get out of that airplane, alive. I had a lot of trust, and I felt better when I got out into that night air. It was dark, but I felt, well, I've got a chance again. But I didn't want to be cooped up in that airplane, having it crash into the English Channel or an embankment someplace. And so down there we were into France in a kind of you might say a bit of a terrifying way.
Laden down with heavy equipment, Lance Corporal Anderson hit the ground hard, right in his back.
I crawled, even though I was in much pain. I crawled away from it a little bit and got under a tree and got my rifle out ready, and just was resting, trying to figure out what I should do. But I had to get my wind back. I was in bad shape for a little while. And then I heard somebody coming, and so I gave him, got my rifle ready, and I gave him, there's a sign, countersign, you say halt, and then give him the countersign. Now I forget what it was, but we say it's something common like beans and pork or something like that. And he responded in the correct manner. And he said to me, he said, "Hi, Andy, how you doing?" And here it was, Ellefson, my Bren gunner. He and I had been together for 2 years straight in the same section, the same company, the same platoon. And there we were.
Anderson soon realized he was lost. The plane had dropped him in the wrong place, 40 kilometers behind enemy lines. He joined up with some other soldiers, but while hiding in a field, the group was spotted.
And then all at once, a mortar went off, some rifle fire, some machine gun fire. There across the pasture, I saw a German. And then I saw one of our own guys, Conahan, out of Toronto. And he shot this German down, and then somebody shot him. And I saw the both of them fall. And then, pardon the expression, all hell broke loose. They were hitting us with everything. And so there was one other guy and myself still left on that south side of that pasture. And so we crawled on our bellies into, there was a kind of an old shed close by, or it could have been a barn at one time. And we crawled in there. I put a bandage on my hand. We crawled in there to see, we didn't know what we're doing. We're just trying to stay alive. We went in there, and there was some kegs on their side, 300-gallon kegs. And they had a little opening. And just like two rats, we saw those holes, and we took off our uniform, we took off our webbing belts, we shoved our rifles in, and we crawled into that little opening at the bottom of that barrel and went in there.
He hid out in the barrel for 3 days. Then there was a week traveling by night, hiding by day. Still behind enemy lines, he came across a group of British soldiers.
And that afternoon, I went with 2 British lads to help them see if we couldn't steal a sheep to have a little food. And the Germans come up behind us on bicycles. And one of the British lads said to me, "We've had it, mate." And I didn't know what he meant. And I looked around like that, and there was a patrol of German soldiers on bicycles, guns, all pointing at us. So yes, we'd had it. I thought that was the end, but it wasn't. They took us prisoner. My first thought was, they're not going to bother with us. Way out here in the trees, there's a war on. But they were good guys, and they took us prisoners, and then we were, in a sense, that old saying, "For you, the war's over." It was over for me.